With its backbone chassis, flat-4 engine and two luggage compartments, the Volkswagen Type 3 is, to say the least, distinctive. Its story begins in Wolfsburg, just under 15 years after the Second World War. At that time, Volkswagen was riding high. The Beetle had sold over 2 million units. The Combi, in all its forms, was selling like hotcakes. The Karmann Ghia coupes and convertibles also had their fans, helping to keep the German manufacturers' coffers full, but the German firm's executives were convinced that the Beetle's glory days were behind it and that it was urgent to develop, if not a replacement, at least a model aimed at a slightly more upscale clientele. It will be the Type 3, which was first introduced in September of 1960. There is no reason to question technical choices that have proven entirely satisfactory. To oversimplify, we are taking the Beetle's structure and grafting a new body onto it. In reality, this Type 3 features a ribbed chassis with a central beam, to which the two floor panels are attached. The front end has been thoroughly revised, now featuring two long torsion bars and entirely different mounting points. At the rear, while we still find those same torsion bars, VV has also introduced a new connection to the chassis. During its production run, the rear suspension was modified, incorporating a double-jointed design and half axles. The original brakes were drums. Before the adoption of front discs, starting in 1965, a year later, the Type 3's electrical system switched to 12 volts. Naturally, the powertrain consists of an air-cooled flat-4 engine featuring a central camshaft which is positioned deep within the rear overhang. In order to significantly reduce its overall footprint, the cooling system is oriented horizontally rather than vertically, as it had been on the earlier Beetles. When the Type 3 was first launched, it featured a 1.5-liter unit that offered a total of 45 horsepower. In 1963, an S version was introduced with the same engine, but equipped with dual carburetors, allowing this Volkswagen to hit 135 km per hour instead of 125. In 1965, the engine was increased to 1,584 cubic centimeters, fueled either by dual carburetors or Bosch fuel injection for the US market. Due to emission standards, it offered 54 horsepower in both cases. Power is sent to the rear wheels via a 4-speed manual transmission with a floor-mounted shifter. 2 years down the line, you are finally given the option to select a 3-speed automatic transmission system. The public at the Frankfurt Motor Show in September 1961 gave the new Volkswagen Type 3 a warm welcome. It was presented as a 2-door, 3-box sedan with a very classic profile, featuring a slightly longer rear overhang than the front. The wheel arches are rounded and a fine crease distinguishes the flanks, fading as it approaches small rear fins, revealing slightly slanted vertical lights. The front end, devoid of a grille, is marked by round headlights at the tips of the fenders and turn signals of the same shape, mounted on a specific bracket just above a perfectly straight bumper, adorned with two bumper guards. The front hood, also ribbed, features a VV monogram in its center. In 1963, the A versions adopted new turn signals with chrome housings that extend onto the fenders, as well as a chrome trim strip that highlights the front end. As we mentioned, the rear incorporates subtle fins onto which angled taillights are fitted, which would also be slightly modified in 1963 on the 1500S models. Finally, below the bumper, there is a wide air intake spanning the entire width. As early as the winter of 1962, Volkswagen offered a Type 3 variant, which is to say a 2-door station wagon version. The roof, cleverly extended, remains flat all the way to the tailgate, which opens as a single piece between the two fenders. Note the air intakes along the top of the rear fenders. The front end, like the taillights, is identical to that of the Notchback sedan. For the 1966 model year, the Type 3 range, now upgraded to a 1600cc engine, was expanded with a fastback body style. Once again, the design team at Volkswagen has truly hit the mark with a beautifully executed sloping roofline, resulting in a remarkably sleek profile that gives off the distinct impression of a high-performance sports coupe. This bodywork also features the side air intakes already seen on the wagon. As for the rest, with the exception of the rear panel, the front end and the lights remain unchanged. In the summer of 1969, the Type 3s, now 1600s, was slightly modernized, featuring, among other things, new bumpers, a slightly rounded front end incorporating new turn signals, and larger taillights. These Type 3s, measuring just over 4 meters 30 in length, while sharing the same wheelbase as the Beetles, offer a much more spacious interior. But that is not the only difference. The seats are wider, better padded, and therefore more comfortable, as is the rear bench, which is of a new design. As for the upholstery, it is built to last and will evolve according to the versions and model years. The padded dashboard features 3 individual round dials. In the center, the largest one houses the tachometer, flanked on the left by the fuel gauge, oil pressure, and various warning lights, and on the right by a clock. The driver faces a thin 2-spoke steering wheel, while the passenger only has to reach out to access the glove box. Although the dashboard will remain virtually unchanged, a thicker 4-spoke steering wheel will be introduced for the final model years. In their early years, Type 3s featured adjustable seat backrests, a center armrest, an ashtray, sun visors, and more. This equipment was expanded in later model years, depending on the version, with features such as new seats with integrated headrests. But one of the unique features of these German cars is how they handle luggage. With its rear-mounted boxer engine, it features both a front and a rear trunk, allowing for a capacity of 380 liters on the sedan models, while reaching 450 liters on the fastback version. The station wagon, meanwhile, offers a cargo capacity that climbs to over 1.2 cubic meters once the rear seats are folded down. This version will therefore be popular with both families and those who also use the Type 3 variant as a work vehicle. It is also worth noting that it is available as a 2-seater utility vehicle with paneled side windows, with a payload of 375 kg or even 465 kg as an option. The front trunk capacity of all models will be increased by approximately 40 liters across the entire range, facelifted in 1969. The Volkswagen Type 3 was never actually produced as a 4-door sedan, with the sole exception of Brazil, though we will return to that later, nor was it ever built as a convertible, even though this variant was fully developed and was even officially announced. Unfortunately, this version never went into production. However, the underpinnings and mechanics of the Type 3 were entirely carried over for the Type 34 Karmann Ghia Coupe, produced from 1961 to 1969 alongside the famous Type 14s. This model, with its distinct sharper lines and unique identity, featured a custom interior with its own trim, upholstery, and dashboard. On the flip side, this coupe, more upscaled and sporty, was the most expensive model in the Volkswagen lineup, priced at twice the cost of a 1200 Beetle. Even so, a total of approximately 40,000 units were eventually produced. In Brazil, the production of the Type 3 model officially began in 1968 under the name 1600. Its boxer engine produced 50 54, and then 56 horsepower in its final years. Throughout its history, it would be available as a 2 or 4-door notchback sedan, a 2 or 4-door fastback, and as a station wagon, always called the Variant. Its front end, completely different from the European Type 3s, featured rectangular headlights, then 4 round ones. This VW, upon crossing the South Atlantic, also lost its fins and was fitted with horizontal taillights that varied in size depending on the model year. From 1973, the 1600 models were restyled with modernized front and rear ends. The interior also gets a refresh, and these latest Type 3 models see their equipment upgraded. This Brazilian model would end its production run in 1980. Across all versions, more than 430,000 Type 3s rolled out of the São Bernardo do Campo factory. It should also be added that from 1972 to 1975, VW also produced nearly 25,000 units of a very attractive coupe in Brazil based on the 1600, the Karmann Ghia TC, which was exclusively reserved for its domestic market. Capitalizing on Volkswagen's reputation in the US for fuel efficiency compared to domestic production, the Type 3 enjoyed a successful commercial run there, just as it did in Europe. Customers generally praised its build quality as well as its robustness, reliability, and ease of maintenance. Furthermore, to counter those who deemed its performance insufficient, in the spring of 1964, the Type 3 set several records in its class at the Monza circuit, notably the 10,000-mile record at an average speed of 126 km per hour. Even though this record was broken a month later by Ford with its Cortina, Volkswagen used it for advertising in its brochures, claiming that a Type 3 could be driven flat out at all times, not counting the Brazilian production, nor the sedans, station wagons, and vans that came out of the Clayton factory in Australia. Volkswagen sold no fewer than 2,540,000 Type 3s between 1961 and 1973, half of which were station wagons. Results that, while not on par with those of the Beetle, are still more than impressive. But by the early 70s, Volkswagen was well aware that its rear-engine models were reaching the end of their life cycle and were looking increasingly outdated compared to the competition. The Type 3, that forgotten chapter in automotive history, was retired in 1973, along with the more imposing Type 4s, also known as the 411 and 412, which were replaced by the first generation of the Passat, these front-wheel drive sedans and station wagons, ushered in a more than promising new era for Volkswagen. But that is a story for another time indeed.